Alright, so for folks online, we just did intros around the room. Could y'all please jump in and let us know who you are, where you're from?
Mike Kleffner, City of Papillion.
Greg Ewell, Felsberg, Halton, Olavig. Morning, everyone.
Matt Cox, City of Council Bluffs.
Joan Green, ENA Consulting Group.
That's everyone. We've also got Craig Milkey from Spanish.
Or just Joaquin, you want to do a quick introduction? Jonathan, speak on Omaha Planning Department. Okay. I think that is everyone attending today. So we'll move into our first action item. I have the minute from the February meeting that were available up front and I believe posted online. Anybody have any questions or discussions regarding the February meeting minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve? Motion to approve. We have a motion from Austin, second. Second. Okay. Second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passing. Our last action item is the MAPA 2027 Unified Planning Work Program. Carlos is going to present that.
Yeah, so this is one of many federally supported transportation planning activities that MAPA must accomplish. One is a year-long planning effort to kind of set the budget, set the revenues coming in for planning funds, and set what we're going to do with those planning funds. This consists of something called PL funding, so you'll know me refer to that, and we also get a portion of Federal Transit Administration 305D formula funds. So those come into MAPA and we'll refer to them as PL. Being a dual state agency, we get an apportionment from Nebraska, which is the bulk of our funds, and some from Iowa. So the states have formulas for urbanized areas and we use those formulas to set those targets and numbers. Just giving you a little look underneath. Our draft is due to the state and federal partners April 1st of every year. And so this is kind of the start of our budget season and all that is there. For the following year, our biggest priority is going to be trips. If you have questions on trips or what it means, ask Court. But that's our big federal discretionary funding to look at prioritization process within the metro region, within the TMA. So you may have heard or seen some of our conversations that we're starting with local communities. For the majority of this coming fiscal year, we're going to continue doing exploration and intense focus groups and interviews with all our local contingencies. Some of the other things that we're working on, obviously supporting safety and safety planning throughout the region, doing complete street support throughout the communities. The other one, reconnect communities, we're working through our federal agreements on that. And then the other big regional plan that we're working on is the regional freight plan led by Jim. So if you haven't heard from us right now, we are doing some background information, background gathering, and data gathering on that part. As more information and more things that we can share come out, we'll come back to this group throughout the year. But that's kind of the big projects that we're taking on. And obviously working to collect big data and understanding what big data providers have. Now to the numbers. So we receive about 5.9 million, almost 6 million in federal funding. That looks at about 2.9, almost 3 million in new funding and about 3 million in carryover funding. Basically, what has been said carries over to this year. From that, we have to match at an 80-20 for most of our project work, and I'll get to why that's important. But we're looking at about 1.5 million matching funds in kind, part partners, cash, and aerial photography. Direct labor, fringe, et cetera, et cetera. This is kind of what makes the work happen. And it's looking at 6.7 million in total. The biggest chunk of this kind of work effort you'll see in the forms of contracts and sub-recipients. So we're doing about $3.8 million worth of projects, pass-throughs, contracts in the coming year. This number is usually higher during the draft. As we refine in the next month or so, that number should shrink. And so we'll see changes in the next one. Next up, here are the main MAPA activities. We kind of focus on 4 main things: administration management, regional transportation planning, TIP and local projects, and then this 440 category streets. Overall, we're looking at about 2.9 million in these 4 categories. This is our internal work that we do here at MAPA. What keeps the lights on, what keeps the projects moving, what keeps the lights on and these meetings going 11 months out of the year. This is what accounts for that. This year, we're looking at an 84% federal share. In the last couple of years, we've been trying to maximize this 440. A couple of years back, federal government had this exemption from this 80-20 rule. Complete Streets is one of those exemptions to the planning work that we take on, and that is eligible at 100% federal match. And so that's kind of throwing off our federal share numbers, makes it a little bit harder, but it allows our staff to engage in work that is meaningful for Complete Streets, and the work that we've been doing with that in coordination with the state and local communities. Next. These are, in theory, the contracts and sub-recipients that we're looking at. Again, some of these numbers may be a little high for right now, but these are the types of projects and programs and contracts that we're taking on. This year, we had about 1.5 million in Heartland 2050 grant. Not all of them are going to go forward next year. They might be spread out through several years worth of work. So we anticipate that number to shrink in the coming month. So overall, subcontracts and subrecipients looking at 3.9 million total. And that is it. If anyone has questions on all the budget and fun stuff, we provided detailed tables. If you have more questions, let us know. We're here to answer questions.
Are there any questions?
If you have, if not.
If not, what we're actually looking for is a vote to present this draft program for an open public comment period. That's what we're actually looking for, no doubt to like that. So moved up. Okay, we have a motion. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Oh, same sign. Motion passes.
Can you guys just name who motioned and seconded that?
That motion and Austin second.
Thanks.
This point in the program, we're going to open this up for public comment. If there's anybody in the room or online that wants to comment on anything, this is your chance. Hearing none, Jim is going to present Safe Streets for All.
All right, good morning, everybody. So any day now, we're gonna get the notice of funding opportunity for the 5th round of funding for Safe Streets and Roads for All. Final year, as we know of right now, we'll be waiting for reauthorization and all those things, but kind of our last opportunity. These will be for the communities in the map to the right. Those were the communities that were covered, and you don't worry, of course, you've got your Potawatomi County plan to lean on as well. And we're happy to help if you do have questions that way. So we're looking at about $1 billion and really an opportunity. And this is morphed over time. Every year the NOPOs come out, it's looked a little bit different. and I'll get to some things at the end, but there's some pretty non-traditional funding going to areas that I think can have pretty big impact. So if you have a question, even after I go through this, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll work to find a way really to put funds towards safety in our region. So big laundry list. The NOFO is going to list things that you do. Supplemental planning sounds like it's just planning, and it's not. So supplemental planning can include things putting infrastructure out on the roadways to improve safety immediately. It just comes with a couple of lines that you have to show your work. You have to evaluate the effectiveness, and it has to go back into our comprehensive safety action plan. So it's going to take some coordination, but we'd like to take that opportunity again. So some of these, again, the city of Omaha and Council Bluffs have previously applied to round, so speed management plans, looking at traffic calming areas that you'd like to, as a community, bring together. If you'd like to do it as a region, more than happy to do that as well. And it's just really a good opportunity to kind of hit at something that maybe has been on your to-do list, and this would be a way to find some money and also some consultant support if that's what's going to make it happen to accomplish those tasks. A good number of projects in the list of items identified, and I'd like to even kind of stretch a little bit further. Got our appendix for each community at the end of the table. If you'd like to grab one of those and circle and ask questions. We'd like to take an opportunity to look at the projects that were identified. Maybe if you have questions, maybe if we put a roundabout down and you say, Cheatham, I don't know, put a roundabout there. There's still funding to go and do that. So you've seen that the modular arrangements, if it's just a study you'd like to do, we'd like to find a way to kind of narrow that gap and really get towards executing these projects. And even if it's not, your first choice, there's money to be done for that planning as well. It's not going to get you to PE or construction. So that's just something to take into consideration. So as I said, there's the planning and then there's demonstration. City of Omaha has had some really good examples. They're in our quick build design guide that's down there in the bottom, but these are just, you want to go out, you want to see how something's going to work, and you need to do it right now. You need to address a current safety issue. These are the modular pedestrian islands on 24th Street at 2 locations, and then 13th and William, kind of the bump out and changing the nature of the curve on a busy street that has kind of a changing dynamic of how people are walking and getting around. So the funding would cover not just the planning that goes along with the temporary materials. Again, it comes with a requirement for you and for us that you do data collection before and after. And we'd update our comprehensive safety action plan. If it doesn't work, they also do have a strict requirement that you remove what you put down. All right, finally, this is the one that I'm really excited about. And this one, as I've read more, and I can share all the applications they post, what all the other communities applied for and got funding for. There's a lot of money in this, and there's a lot of infrastructure being put down. So you can say, can I put equipment here? Maybe it's a pedestrian hybrid beacon, maybe it's rapid repeating flashing beacons, maybe it's just some additional signage to draw attention to an area and to get at a hot spot or a trouble spot where you're getting reporting. It's going to cover all of that and get that change to your roadway done with the grant application. So I'm interested in if there are questions on how you would execute this in your agency, then please reach out. But I think that there's a real opportunity to put funding towards safety projects. So these could be at locations identified in the project, or if you'd like to do something more, cross-cutting and look at a region, look at a roadway, there's an opportunity for that as well.
And you cannot do demonstration until you have supplemental plan.
So you can do a demonstration just based upon this. So this gives you everything you need, or your local road safety plan would as well. So you'd have to tie it towards the recommendations in your plan, but my sense is that you would probably have enough of a framework to go for this. And again, that planning is, I recognizing that there's something maybe missing from your plan that you can do that as well. So you could do them in parallel. Okay, so behavioral operational, there's a lot of money that went towards this in 2025. And really kind of, there's a list of options. Safe routes to school is always an interesting one. emergency medical services and responders got a lot of funding last year, and so we're working directly with some of the region here to bring some technology and some just really some common sense capabilities to our local fire departments. So here we are. So the city of Omaha Fire Department has an arrangement with UNMC, and they provide whole blood. In a nutshell, these traumatic crashes where folks have a lot of blood loss, they can, it's just a matter of stretching out that time. So they basically have blood in the apparatus or the emergency vehicles, and they can provide a pre-hospital transfusion nationwide that reduces mortality by 37%. So in Nebraska in 2023, as opposed to 43%, 68% of people who passed away were alive when first responders arrived. So it's, you know, again, not calling out or you know, acknowledging maybe we have issues in other areas, but it just provides a real opportunity in a measured area of need. So we're working with Bennington and Waterloo Fire Departments right now. We'll talk to Gretna Fire Department next week, and we'll reach out to Council Bluffs and others too. But our goal is to have a regional whole blood program in place here in short order. All right, so here's the timeline. We got to move quick. That's why I've got the paper out there. If you have any questions, please ask them, get an email to me right away, because we're anticipating only 60 days instead of 90 for this notice of funding opportunity. And as Carlos listed previously, all of us have quite a bit going on. So we would appreciate the opportunity to, if you have a thought, if you have something you want to do, if you're not sure, please reach out and ask. We do have the opportunity, I would anticipate, to make only one application for the MAPA region. The folks that I talked to, the fire departments, have asked that be a MAPA application. And so we're reserving that right. But if there's a need or a desire for, especially for smaller communities, to band together and do a regional application, we can work with them. And Bennington would be able to make that application for the whole blood for the region through the program as well. Any questions for me after all of that?
Jim, are you still partnering on this? Or?
We are, yeah. And so, yeah, that's a good one. We did reach out to the infrastructure hub and to local projects. This is tough as an MPO. We can't build things. We don't own roads. So there are some lines. What we looked at and what we consider, and I guess we'd offer as far as a regional program is we could apply for local jurisdictions and then be a pass through if some of those funding had to be used for construction. So even those demonstration projects, but at least it would remove the administrative burden from each individual jurisdiction. There is nothing precluding any jurisdiction from applying on your own for Safe Streets funding. We would ask, if you are interested in doing that you keep us in the loop so we know what you're asking for, just so we can.
Well, and I would add, some cities, communities have not signed on to our CSAP.
Yep.
And so to be eligible to apply for more funding, we do request that you have a resolution adopting our CSAP as your CSAP.
And that would, I think, naturally go in that. I put it in May, but if we do it even in April, that'd be great too. So that your city council or your county board of supervisors are aware of what's going on, and that we're all in agreement on how we're going to spend these funds to improve safety in our region. All right, thank you.
All right. So court is going to present the 2027 TIP timeline for us next.
Yep. Pretty straightforward stuff, not really anything surprising, but we're getting into TIP season, so I'll be starting to update the 2027 program next month. I will be reaching out to basically anybody who's got projects that are in the current fiscal year and then also upcoming in the next federal fiscal year, kind of see where those projects sit and what you think you're going to have things obligated before the end of this fiscal year, or if we need to slide some stuff in the next year, and then kind of get a better idea of how things look for 2027. And then we'll have the draft tip here for TTAC in May, do a public comment period, and go through June, and then we'll, or through the beginning of June, and we'll come back and have the document approved in June, and then it'll all go live in October, and then we'll probably end up doing kind of a cleanup amendment in October as the new federal fiscal year kicks off to capture anything that happened in between June and the start of that federal fiscal year. So you can look forward to me reaching out and asking all about what your projects are sitting for this year and next year. Any questions about that? Basically just me letting you know that, oh, I'm gonna be talking to you.
And we look forward to it, Courtney.
Excellent. That's all I've got.
Okay, you wanna just dive right into advanced construction then?
Yeah, yes, I do. So I don't know, it was maybe January, February, Austin actually asked me about kind of like, you know, like what really is the AC resurfacing program? And it, you know, it almost seems like when you look at the federal requirements around system preservation and that sort of thing, that, you know, this whole program is kind of odd, and it kind of is. Well, I'll kind of get into the background of what AC is and the way that we're using it here. But AC is, advanced construction is basically just flexibility with delivering federal aid projects. This is the language basically from FHWA, just kind of saying like how they define it. And it's effectively just that you're doing the project up front with local funds and then getting paid on the back end. Now, I know that sounds a little bit different than a lot of the times that we're using it in the region, and I'll get into that in a moment. I just kind of wanted everybody to kind of get an idea of, you know, this is really what it is. Anytime you're talking about advanced construction, what you're doing it is, you're building it now with federal funds, you're following the federal aid process, and then MAPA is programming federal funds in the future to reimburse you once the funds become available. Most of the time, in most areas of the country, they're using it because they just don't have enough funding to get up, you know, important projects over the finish line in, you know, the near years, and then having the funding reimbursed them on the back end later on. This can be used for any project. I mean, there might be some restrictions there, but I can't really think of any that, you know, any projects that you wouldn't be able to AC. So basically you can do this on any project that is of interest. If you've got the local funds to support construction now, you're able to make that happen. The way that we used it in the MAPA region is a little bit different. So back around the time that I started, and most of the decisions around how project selection was going to work, that was all kind of worked out before I started the MAPA. This was over 10 years ago. My understanding is that Project Selection Committee and TTAC preferred to focus the regional federal aid on expansion projects. And there was kind of like basically a prohibition on just doing system preservation with these funds. As some issues cropped up with kind of delays in project delivery, the MAPA staff kind of proposed allowing this kind of swap for system preservation projects. So effectively, the way that we've been using it is we have this kind of regional, or have had this regional ban on system preservation. So what we would do is you would take a larger expansion project through the project selection process. And then after that project was awarded funding, you would say, all right, well, what I would prefer to do is federalize some system preservation with a promise that you as the jurisdiction will do the larger expansion project later on once the reimbursement funds come in from the advanced construction of the system preservation projects. So it gets a little bit convoluted, and it's not really mandatory to do things that way. You could do system preservation projects today. That's been kind of opened up. There's no longer that prohibition that you just can't do system preservation. Now, if you turned in just some resurfacing, probably wouldn't score as well as the expansion because the expansion projects basically have access to points that you really wouldn't be able to get with system preservation. So you could still submit a larger project and then say, all right, well, we want to do this with AC resurfacing instead of taking that expansion project through the federal aid process. The idea being that system preservation is just, it's easier to get through the federal aid process than an expansion project is. But it really was a locally created constraint. And that's really what I would like to discuss here is, are you interested in in changing how we approach system preservation? Like, is this a conversation that we want to have? Like, basically, we can update the scoring, we can create a set aside for system preservation if we're interested in something like that. Doesn't necessarily have to be decided here. This committee can refer that to the project selection committee. We can hash that out in a small group. But given that there was, I mean, I've had other questions about AC resurfacing in the past and kind of, because like I said, it's kind of convoluted, but if we want to have a conversation about that, we're here to help kind of facilitate all that stuff. So if there's other questions or if it's still not entirely clear.
Just a little bit of add on to that, before court's time, the last time the city did a transportation master plan update, system preservation ranked very, very highly across the board. In the early meetings that we had to discuss, how would you prioritize different things within our community, that system preservation ranked very highly, and that did not go unnoticed by FHWA. And that's part of the reason we have this available to us, is to make sure that system preservation continues. Because as we all know, it's way more expensive to tear something out and build it new than it is to just take care of it. And so that's kind of where that came from, a little bit of the background.
Well, I asked for this to be on the agenda, and one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it was, the converted funds. I think one of the constraints that we have is that by designating a singular project for converted funds to go to, it seems like it takes away flexibility in the local jurisdiction to use the money that should be free and clear to use on whatever needs come up at the time. And so I think I would like us to have a conversation about that, revisit maybe if that's still the opinion of the group, that converted funds might be better off to be free and clear to use towards the needs of the jurisdiction when those funds become available, rather than designated towards a specific project. And I can speak to the point of, if in the past we didn't want those funds to go necessarily towards another preservation project or to an expansion project. In the city of Omaha, I don't think we would ever do that, because, for us to go through a resurfacing project through the federal process on the front side of the AC, obviously that's an easier federal process to go to with the resurfacing project. But even though it's easier, there still is some extra cost for us to go through that federal process. So we're, paying 110% of what we can do a resurfacing project locally to get that money back at a later date, to use 80% of it towards another one. When we program every year those preservation projects, that future year, we're gonna have programming money for those preservation projects. I can't see a situation where we would take a preservation project on the federal side on the front end, convert those funds and use it for another preservation project. We're looking for flexibility in how we deliver our expansion projects with our CIP, and having to go through the project selection process to get the project that the converted funds go towards is very cumbersome and inflexible for us. And so I would like to see a little more flexibility in how we can use those converted funds.
So you would, one option would be, you could just submit for resurfacing. You could simply apply for funds to do resurfacing, but like I said, under the current scoring criteria, you probably wouldn't score as highly as some of the other projects. Unless there's a whole lot of system preservation and then we're comparing apples to apples. But
Sure, and again, I don't think we would do that for the converted funds. I'm saying if the federal process allows for us to have those funds free and clear to use wherever we want, and if MAPA is having.
Yeah, but you still need, sorry, this is Mike Kleffner, but you would still need to apply for those funds.
yeah,
Right, we would still apply for those funds, they would still have to be programmed. But they're programmed.
Yeah, so you would apply for a system preservation project versus an expansion project.
Cause you could just do resurface, like you don't necessarily have to tie the resurfacing to another project. Tying the resurfacing to another project basically makes your scoring better.
So
That's really
I guess here's what I don't understand, here's the question. If our front side resurfacing project.
Yep.
Let's say we have $10 million we're gonna spend. We know we're gonna get 8 million back. If we go through that federal process. Why do I have to have a project identified on the backside? We could just have 8 million program in a year that is a recipient from the resurfacing project.
The question is whether you can get just the resurfacing project through the project selection process. And if you can, like if basically PROSCOM says, yeah, that seems like a good project, go for it. You don't have to tie it to any project. It's just that the project is probably gonna look better if it's an expansion project, unless TTAC and PROSCOM wanna recommend that we change our project selection policy to accommodate system preservation more than we have in the past.
Well, I mean, if we could have a process that says, okay, we're gonna AC the funds, we're gonna front the money on the resurfacing project. You could still do it. Could we make a modification to project selection that says, okay, if this is an AC program of funds, it goes through a different selection process?
We could, yeah.
But your only issue is that for at the state and the Fed level, that's got to be programmed as such.
Well, sure, it's programmed as the resurfacing project.
And it still has to
The year
meet
gets programmed.
Yeah, it still has to meet all the federal requirements, right?
Yes.
So if you're trying to resurface collector or below collectors, local streets. I'm sorry, too bad, we can't use the SPG. But if you have, say, a Dodge Street that is 2 miles and it's $5 million, it doesn't matter the funding, you could put in for full resurfacing in Dodge as your project. And say, hey, we'll get reimbursed, you could still go through an AC process.
No, I understand that. I understand what you're saying. So what I'm hearing here is that's not gonna make it to PROSCOM.
Well, I don't know.
Well,
It's not as narrow, it has scores,
It has a lower like,
it has a lower like.
it's gonna have a lower.
Yeah.
So if we had a separate pathway for the AC funds spent, where if we came into the application and said, this is the project we wanna do, we wanna AC the funds to a later date, can it go through a different selection process?
That would effectively be, like, it's creating a target or a set aside for,
System
for
preservation.
system preservation. We basically,
3R practice.
we get about 20 million in STBG a year. And you could carve out an amount from that and say that the system is saying, or the region is saying that we would like to spend X amount on system preservation, then everybody can just apply to that pool separately.
Yeah, cause I think that just gives us a lot more flexibility on the back end to meet the changing needs that we have year over year.
And like, one of the things I'd like to point out, in the region in the last 5 years or so, there've only been 2 communities that do AC right now. It's been the city of Omaha and the city of Bellevue. No other community has applied for AC. As far as I.
Well, some communities use AC flexibility, but the only ones that have used the AC resurfacing program, I believe, have been the city of Omaha and Bellevue.
And Bellevue. And so there is a need to establish some form of preservation system funding, or make it eligible, make it more comparable in the scoring of it, at the very least, or at least that's what I'm hearing. And if others agree, we can talk about it and look through it and see how we could do that. And right now, the only things that we could come up with is updating the scoring, and we could work on what that would look like, or B, creating a set aside. Just give us what direction we want us to tackle, and if you want us to tackle both, we can tackle both.
Is there a upper limit to how much could be set aside for system preservation?
I don't think so.
So the reason I asked that question is, we could probably spend every dollar you get every year on system preservation and avoid a lot of red tape that we're going through on the federal level or NEPA and such. And just fund that locally, like we're funding system preservation locally today. and switch. So that would be worth the consideration. That was my first question. My second question is kind of for you, Austin, is completely different tangent here, but do you have any concern in the minds with my experience at the city, folks that really want to dump money into development, that now when you get that AC check back to you, it's designated for the project? That protects you a little bit. They can't grab it for the latest riverfront development project and say, oh, great, Public Works is gonna get this $8 million check from MAPA. We're gonna go build this road for Fortune 500 company XYZ down here because we really want this developed. Does that concern you at all, or you think you could protect yourself from that?
Well, I think, you know, you've been at enough of those meetings to know that I'm a pretty fierce protector.
I do know this.
So, but let's just, you know, to play devil's advocate on that, if that's what our community deems as the most important use of our transportation dollars, why, you know, setting me aside and my little greediness to spend it all on 4th Street or, you know, these corridors lacking. If that's what the community deems the most important use of those funds, why is it up to this body to say, no, you can't use it on that?
Well, I guess, and again, this has nothing to do with you or whoever's in your seat. It's not necessarily the community. Sometimes it's a specific developer with the tie to the right person on the 3rd floor. And there were times, you and I both know this, where somebody would call and say, hey, we want $4 million for this development. And Public Works would be like, hope they don't get any. I don't want to give them anything for that. They should pay for that. But sometimes they would. And I mean, Austin is more than capable of defending himself. It's not geared toward him. It's just that sometimes would give another firewall, so to speak, and say, oh, you can't have any of that money. It's designated for the 42nd and D Bridge project because we went through PROSCOM and we have to spend it on that. So I'm just throwing that out there. Every community is a little different, but hey.
Can
Here's the reality.
I make a point? Court, how many years are we programmed out?
About 6.
Okay, and if we funded all the projects the what I would say expansion or capacity projects from applications, how far out do you think we could program?
Wait, what do you mean? Like,
Well, for like 168th that the county wants another 50 million for. Or I've got projects that are capacity projects that I need funding for. Omaha, I know, still has capacity projects. I guess to me, you know, we're looking at trying to do I guess when we don't even have enough Fed money to cover our capital projects, and now we're looking at system preservation in a sense of that now we want to set that money aside for that when we can't cover what we need for capacity with our Fed projects.
Well, and I think the nuance behind that, we'll never have enough to cover a lot of these expansion projects. 50 million is way outside the scope of any of the money that MAPA receives from the federal allotment. And so our goal and our strategy for the region has really been, how do we tee up, right? How do we do the preliminary engineering and MAPA and get through that process to tee up shovel-ready projects to seek discretionary funding? That's what we're trying to intend to do with our local funds.
Well, and I think the irony of the conversation is exactly what I'm trying to do with freeing up some flexibility on the dollars is to fund those expansion projects that I can't currently fund through my CIP. And so what generally happens in our CIP process, okay, let's say this year I identify a specific example. We've got 72nd Street between F and L programmed as a project to receive converted funds from AC. You know, there's a desire to finish that forward, but frankly, the congestion isn't there. It's not. I mean, when it's open, when it's fully open, it has sufficient capacity to handle the traffic that's on it. And so, you know, I go through my CIP, and every year the first thing we do is update the cost estimates. And so we're inevitably losing projects because of that cost. So if I go through my local scoring criteria for my CIP, and let's say I've got those funds programmed for 2029, well, in 2029, I might have a project now underfunded CIP because it's had costs that have gone up. I don't have the capacity there. I've lost money from something else, my transportation bond. I need to cover a gap, and it's a higher priority for my community to do that project as opposed to 72nd and L, which I can push off a few years because it still has capacity to meet the needs of the transportation community. Why can't I have the flexibility to take those funds, which I've already paid for on the front side, and take them and put them back to one of those other capacity projects we have?
I think it would be possible to work that into the process. We just have to have a conversation about what that looks like. Like, so one of the things that we tried this last year, I think was the first time we did it, was we basically just opened a call for amendments, and PROSCOM had a discussion about that recently, and that would be one way of doing it. Now, we could do that more frequently than once a year. So if you do notice something like that as you're developing a CIP, basically we bring PROSCOM together, you can kind of present your case. And we could probably address it that way. But then the alternative would be, you know, if we had to set aside for these service and projects, maybe that takes care of it too. I don't know that we're necessarily going to be able to hash all this out here today. I'm interested, I guess, first of all, in should this be a full TTAC conversation, or should we, or do you want to refer this to PROSCOM?
And we've got a note. Greg, you just wanna read your comment here?
Sure. Yeah, I just based on what I'm hearing, I just wanted to chime the history when this whole AC program was started. FHWA's condition to allow the use of the converted funds was that there had to be a project identified that had gone through selection process, because they were saying us as the MPO had to show that progress toward the regional goals that are, you know, set up through your long range transportation plan, the whole regional process. So that was kind of the condition to set it up. I don't know if that's changed, but I just think the federal highway perspective probably important to this conversation.
Yeah, Greg, that makes sense. I would, but at this point, system preservation is a major goal within the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So I think that's probably where that change is, that we have that as a, like, that's out in front as, you know, we kind of have a sort of a fix it first mentality in the MTP. So I think that covers that base.
I like the discussion, and I think it's a PROSCOM discussion to discuss whether the scoring criteria should or could be altered to reflect the need for system preservation. Because if we're spending, and I don't know what the percentages are, but years ago, it was 20% we were spending on documentation. And that's 2% or 5% or whatever it is on system preservation. That's easy math. That we can get more money to spend on the streets or the system than spending it on paperwork. That is attractive to me. So I think that is a PROSCOM discussion, is how do you, or do you prioritize system preservation potentially over some of the capacity expansion?
And I'll offer too, that's our goal with trips, is to understand each community's needs and to combine that with data to really kind of get at what is our system preservation cost going forward. Or, you know, we're talking pavement now, we haven't even mentioned bridges. So, you know, I think, how do we set it up on the table so we can have useful conversations and look 5-10 years out through the MPO rather than, you know, kind of year over year project selection. So that's going to be a big lift, but I'd hope that would help us kind of set those priorities. And I'll echo what Carlos said. I mean, it would allow us to take some opportunity of some really big discretionary funding opportunities if those, you know, continue the next pre-authorization.
All right, so what I'm hearing is there's interest in this. We want to keep talking about it. So what I'm going to do is I'll put some materials together for PROSCOM to take a look at. We'll want to update the project selection policy guide as we get into the fall. We'll probably end up opening call for projects in October. So as kind of like the development of that policy guide, we'll kind of work something into that through PROSCOM and then ultimately bring it back to TTAC in September or October. Does that sound like the way to move forward?
And I think like just some caveats to think through, system preservation can also mean bridges. And one bridge can literally be 20 years worth of the funding that we have available.
Yes.
So there is also that potential for that type of risk as well. We'll look at it, we'll have a couple different goes at it, and hopefully we'll come to you all with more information. But just putting that bug in every once a year that it could also be the other way, where one single bridge can take the entire package of projects.
Yeah, one question.
Yeah.
And it's related to the phase H2 project that we've kind of been talking about with AC. So we have STBG funds for H2 programmed in 2031, but I was trying to get it built in 2029, and this whole idea of AC came up, and I think there was some concern from Austin that we didn't want to impact our, or we were going to be maxing out our resurfacing funds by doing that. But I guess just based on your first slide there, like,
You can AC anything.
and because we already have the federal funds for that project identified, it doesn't really have anything to do with resurfacing.
Correct.
So I guess I don't know if that's still a possibility. We probably need to talk about it internally, but if that's a way that we could still build that project, maybe we would need the local funds
Right.
2 years ahead of
You're just
when we're getting reimbursed with 80% Fed aid, but okay, I mean,
It's borrowing from the future, basically.
because we didn't apply for
It's
those
not
funds
guaranteed.
as a
That's the
resurfacing
great-
project to begin with, we applied for them as
Yeah.
phase H2.
You can still AC it. Yeah, and you can, if you got the local funds and you want to do a project early, talk to me about it and we'll get it programmed as AC.
And that's not just roads, like if Metro wanted to AC bus buying buses, they could have a project to buy buses in 28, buy them now and get reimbursed in 28, the later year when the funding is available. So it's not restricted to any one project.
From an NDOT standpoint, Jared, I don't know if you can speak much on the CMAQ projects that we have developed for District 2, but we have a directive to get some CMAQ projects programmed for resurfacing that are within the metro area that by rights, I mean, the city would be better equipped to do some of these projects, but we're developing in-house state projects to resurface. Would that be applicable to something like this?
Might be something we want to consider as we're thinking about how we want to use STBG. So it could be applicable, but I don't know, without knowing all the details.
I mean, I'm not.
Because on the back end, the state does flex quite a bit. CMAQ and other funds and to SVG.
Ultimately, as we're putting together this TRIPS project, the goal is to line all of these things up. Like we want to match projects with the best source of federal aid that we can. Whatever makes sense as far as spending down balances, getting projects across the finish line, however we want to prioritize things. Because right now we do some of this stuff, it's not entirely in a vacuum, but we do want to be better coordinated about it. So this is all part of having that kind of conversation about, well, does it make more sense to use CMAQ here versus STBG? Would we be better off using STBG to leverage something else? So I mean, it's probably relevant, we'll just have to have a conversation.
Okay, it's the whole concept kind of only got floated within the last few months, but that's,
Sure.
it was a directive that we needed to spend them in 27, 28, 29. And these projects didn't exist before a month ago, so trying to figure out who's going to be spearheading this. So I didn't know, this sounds like this is a decent way to flex that, but not the directive that I had gotten to this point.
It might be, yeah.
I think that's worthwhile, we could get together and
talk about that. I think it's very worthwhile to look at that. I mean, if city of Omaha can deliver, we'll take the money. Putting you on the spot, sorry.
All right, any more discussion on that topic? Okay. MAPA staff is going to give us legislative updates.
Sure, so I'll actually pop in virtually here.
Mike is Mike.
Yes, I'm Lord. I'm
gonna try to turn you up, Mike. Hang on a second.
Okay.
Say turn him off or turn him on?
We're gonna try to say that might help. It wasn't very much. Say something now, Mike.
Oh, can you guys hear me?
No, we're having a hard time hearing you, Mike.
Okay, hold on. Give me 1 sec.
Might be the internal setting.
Yeah, that's true.
How about now?
Yeah, much
Okay.
better.
Sorry, my Zoom microphone volume was down. Just a few legislative updates. We provided a longer list of state bills that we were monitoring throughout the session. As we're kind of getting to the end of the year here, and things are, there's still a lot of work to be done on major issues in both sides or I should say both states. But the priorities that we're monitoring really from TTAC's perspective have gotten a little bit narrower. Just a few things I wanted to kind of continue drawing your attention to. LB 1126 is a project that is proposed by NDOT to really create kind of a different model for delivering projects related to some of the bonding and innovative project delivery things that are within the Transportation Innovation Act, but really allowing projects to be developed in different ways to tie to kind of, I would say, future funding sources. So this program and bill doesn't identify those sources, but as you may recall from last session, LB 558 is a task force that's really looking at highway funding, and they're going to have a package of bills next session that address some of these kind of funding levers and what's available for roadway funding in particular. And so this was really to kind of set the stage to have something to point to in that process to really be kind of a different level of partnership, a different way of delivering projects. So more to come on that. I would say, the rules of the road piece in that bill is really about bike signalization, which is something that, our metro has probably had the most things related to that, in addition to, some of the projects in Lincoln. The MUTCD obviously has some things related to that, but really clearing up that line of the Nebraska rules of the road as well. One thing that we talked about in an earlier TTAC, LB 901, is the sales tax bill that's really moving forward. There's been a number of sales tax proposals, both in the first and second year of the biennium. But this one notably doesn't include any of the sales tax provisions related to the Build Nebraska Act. At present, the things that fund the Build Nebraska Act are about 0.25% of the state sales tax, and proposals have been really going around since that was set up to have that be up to 0.5%, which would be a lot of dollars. The state has currently authorized Build Nebraska Act through 2041, but they only have projects identified through 2033. So if that funding, state funding continues to grow, something to keep our eye on, and something that we're definitely thinking about in terms of trips and making sure that as we're developing the MTP, as we're thinking about illustrative projects in the TIP, that we have some of those needs identified and that we're working really closely with all of you to ensure that we can put our best foot forward as a region to capture either that last 8 years of funds as they exist today in whatever process comes, or if that funding grows, maybe that horizon is even earlier. So just something to keep an eye on there, but one update I wanted to give. On the Iowa side, you've got Matt Cox here on the line, who's MAPA's designee to the SUDAS board. But this bill had been kind of making its way in different forms through both chambers in the Iowa legislature, but it would make some pretty dramatic changes to the SUDAS board. And this is the statewide urban design and specifications board. It's something that the regions fund on an annual basis through Iowa DOT and Iowa State University, and provides kind of a baseline for those specifications for projects or cities. Cities can kind of go above and exceed those and have locally defined standards, but it provides some continuity and consistency across the state as a whole. But with many of you that have gone through these specifications changes in recent years, there's a lot of push from the industry to have a larger say in those decisions, everything from design to materials to everything along those. And so this bill would pretty radically change the membership if it does continue to advance. I know that Matt mentioned to me last week that the SUDAS board has addressed some of the membership through the bylaws, kind of to address some of the concerns that have been driving this legislation. But overall, I think having those licensed professional engineers from local governments at the table and really driving the development of these specifications and standards makes the most sense. And that's certainly what we've been having in conversation with all the folks and partners that we have across the state that are looking at this issue too. But definitely something we're keeping an eye on. Matt, I don't know if you have anything else to offer on any of that conversation. Matt may not be present here, but oh, there you go.
Hey, Mike. Not really. I mean, you summarized it pretty well. The challenge is there's a lot of nuance that would have to be interpreted from the current language in the bill. Most notably, SUDAS is a corporation, and so even if they were to replace the board with their own board, there's no way defined how they would assume the ownership of the documents owned by that corporation, which means truly if they started a new SUDAS, let's call it, they would have to start from scratch to develop specifications, because the discussion has been we're not giving them our specifications. So it could become very challenging and probably not a good working relationship if this were to proceed. It doesn't even define, is this an oversight board or does this replace the existing board? Just a lot of problems with how you would actually implement this work. So hopefully it doesn't proceed. Again, we've had some conversations with senators that said it doesn't make sense. We don't support it, but you never know what actually happens on the House floor. It will be interesting to see where this goes.
Yeah, and I think it's really, to my mind, SUDAS is just a great model of that partnership of, local governments collaborating through a university center to really, try to address emergent issues and put out those specifications on an annual basis. Like, man, the governance on that is, one of the most highlighted in the entire nation. And so I think the core piece of that is those local officials really driving it and being at the table, the people that kind of at the tip of the spear on the other end of this. But obviously, those specifications impact, bidding, they impact contracting, they impact real estate development. So there's a lot of interested parties in that. Just really don't think what's in this bill is the right approach to that. So thanks for those comments, Matt.
Yeah, I will just add one other, I think a lot of people there in the room understand that a set of specifications does not build a project. It takes a design professional to apply those specifications and those design standards to the specifics of the project, whether it be site conditions or traffic that's going to be utilizing the roadway, whatever it is, whether the pipe will be located on private property, public property, right of way, under pavement, not under pavement, all those details matter. And I don't think the people that are pushing this legislation understand that you can have whatever you want in a set of documents. It still takes a licensed professional engineer with engineering judgment to apply those appropriately. And our point has always been that you might save a nickel on the front end, but it's going to cost you $1 on the back end. And that's why it's important to us that we build durable infrastructure that actually lasts, because long term, even the inconvenience to the public is a win if we do it right the first time. And it's just really short-sighted, the concept that, one of the big issues is they don't want to put granular subbase under their pavements because they don't think it's necessary, or they don't want to put edge drains. That's crazy. We've been doing that in Council Bluffs for 20 years, but for some reason in the central part of the state, they only recently started pushing it, and now the developers are pushing back very hard because they say it actually prevents them from building affordable housing, which is crazy. The way it actually happens is they sell the lot for whatever they sell the lot for, doesn't matter how much the road costs to build. So they're using affordable housing as a way to have the conversation with senators, but realistically, it's just about how much money they invest in their development. So it's a bad precedent to set all the way around.
Yeah, 100% agree on that. Thanks for that comment, Matt. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Finally, the major property tax bill coming out of the Senate, really being led by Senator Dan Dawson, who's actually from Council Bluffs and chairs the Senate Ways and Means Committee. It is an expansive bill related to property tax, and have lots of thoughts and comments on all of those provisions. But one element in that bill is the notion that the gas tax would actually be indexed to the consumer price index, which would allow it to kind of grow naturally over time. And, in Iowa, up until, I don't recall the year now, but, it had been 30 years since they had touched the state gas tax. Obviously waiting very patiently for the federal side of the revenue equation to change on that front as well. But this is, I think, kind of an interesting provision in what is probably, the most representative framework of how all these different property tax bills are going to come together, at least on the Senate side of things. So something we're going to be keeping an eye on. It would actually have a pretty substantive impact over time to local governments on that, road use tax fund dollars that come down to communities. So just those 4 bills I wanted to highlight today. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions on that issue in the legislature? Okay. Want to dive into our member agency updates. Pat, would you like to start us off on that, since you started us with the introduction? I'm just trying to be consistent for your benefit.
No, I appreciate consistency, I think. Not so much to update at this point in time. Our 84th Street Trail, our congressional discretionary project, is moving forward. I still see a lot of bridge work, a lot of storm sewer work going on. Hoping to see some trail here come up here in the next, 60 days or so. So moving right along. Apologize for the impacts to 84th Street. Thompson Creek Trail, we'll move down the pre-NEPA, pre-PD into the PD phase. So you'll see a little bit more on that. That'll tie Keystone to Central Park, which will be a great addition to the city. Other than that, most of our work this year will be local roads, rehabs or type things. So that's all I got for today.
Okay.
Eric.
Yeah, the Girard Trail has a ribbon cutting on April 29th, so excited about that. And then that will lead to the federal aid project under 72nd Street next, which I mentioned last month, coordinating with Court on. But yeah, more trails, more places, excited about it. We're also doing a ribbon cutting the end of April on WP4 Mad Bear Lake. So the entity is finishing a bunch of projects and inviting people to come out and enjoy natural resources this spring and summer.
County, we just got Western Engineering under contract for 14 miles of and overlay on Tamarack Road. It's one of our big projects, and for 400 million, so we're gonna be with the price. No updates here.
No updates from last one.
I don't really have anything.
No updates at all.
Okay.
No, 480 Missouri River Bridge that started up again. We'll have 1 lane traffic in each direction. We're gonna do the inside of both bridges. We did the outside last year. Let's see what else we got here. We got a few things to do on Dodge Street. We have a little bit of permanent striping and bridge nosing on 132nd. That won't take very long. 72nd L, that's moving along. We're still gonna be done by November 26th this year. The viaduct is gone, walls and the backfill's removed, they're starting to grade. So gonna stay the way it is, east-west traffic, till we get pretty much done. North-south, that's gonna be switched back and forth all the time, depending on what we're doing. We got some other stuff, projects starting up. We're gonna build a noise wall on I-80 westbound about, I guess it'd be 131st Street. And then we're gonna start up on the Bellevue Bridges, phase 2. We're gonna do the deck repairs and, overlay those down toward the, south end. Another one is, Highway 50 from Nebraska 1 to Louisville. Gonna mill overlay that. And we're gonna put a new bridge deck on the bridge over the Burlington Northern. Let's see, another one, Highway 50 again. Nebraska 1 to Louisville, culvert repairs. Another one, 80 from the Platte River to Millard East. That'll be nice work. We're gonna do concrete sealer. Another one, Highway 36, 132nd to 133. That, we're gonna repair that bridge west of 133 and then mill and overlay. Pacific and Dodge Street, that has started. We're gonna add a lane from Pacific to Dodge Street. We're gonna widen the bridge westbound over one of those Patfield creeks. And we got a repair work at 96th and I-80 on the south side of the road. There's a culvert been giving us trouble for years. Another one's gonna be starting up here real quick is 275 and West Dodge Road. That's a roundabout we're gonna build there. We're gonna completely close that off. We'll detour everybody around it. And another one, I-80 from Nebraska 50 to 50th Street. Pavement repair, diamond grinding and concrete sealer. That's pretty much night work too. Another one is 80 westbound, 72nd to 84th, off ramp repair and mill overlay. That was just westbound. And we're going to be putting up some more high mast towers along 275. One at 680 in Center, and then 275 in Meek Street Valley, Highway 64, Highway 36, and then the way station on Highway 77. And that's, we'll be starting this summer.
Speaking of that West Dodge roundabout, the owner of the marketing manager of the venue out there reached out to me the other day, asking about detours, when it's all gonna be implemented and all that. As far as I know, I responded to them. We're gonna be closing that intersection down in about 2 weeks, April 6th. So sure we'll be in touch. I think we just had the pre-con yesterday.
It was last morning.
Oh, was it this morning? Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to leave early to get here.
Yeah, so we had the pre-con. We should have an idea, rough idea of what the contractor's schedule is, but that closure will be impacting Western Douglas in the coming weeks.
During an election year, thanks a lot. Hey, Douglas County, the Southwest residents are not very happy with us. We've got F and Harrison closed now. And unfortunately, Q Street needs to be closed west of 204th as well sometime this summer, and the phasing is not going to allow the other ones to be open in time. So we are gonna do west of Q Street. We are gonna do Q Street west of 204th, especially under traffic. And so we're working on a phasing plan for that now. Go ahead and get started on that. That way, hopefully we can be done with it when we're done with Q Street east of 204th and just open it all at the same time. And it looks like we actually thought about what we were gonna do. Rainwood Road, we're building it from scratch. There's no road there today from 156 to 168. That's getting done this summer. Bennington's got a middle school that's coming in there. They're gonna start construction on that next year. And they need a road for some strange reason to start that construction. So that'll be done this summer. 108th and McKinley. We're gonna make a connection and improve that tie-in over there for all the light industrial going in that area. That's the big stuff that's going on in this county.
With District Two, just from a planning standpoint, I think the last meeting I had referenced that we had the Sarpy County interchange meeting, shortly after TTAC. It was that following week. That was a pretty successful meeting. We had over 200 people show up for that. Pretty much anyone from our administration was there representing the department, so it was a pretty popular meeting. Mixed, I think we got mixed messages from people, either happy that we were improving the functionality of that area and people that weren't too happy with the increased traffic in a rural setting. We did have a public meeting yesterday for I-680 reconstruction from Fort up to Blair High Road, kind of I-680 from Fort to Blair High, and then 133 from the interchange up to State Street. Relatively low turnout, about 30 people attending that, but I think it was pretty well received. Anyone that drives that today is looking for any kind of improvement. It'll be 2 years of pain to get it constructed before they see any benefit. And then just as an FYI for next TTAC, we do have a public meeting for the I-80 reconstruction, our design build project. Next Tuesday, March 24th from 5 to 7 at Buena Vista High School.
And that was I-80 from 50th to I-480.
Yeah, about a mile and a half or so project in there.
Is that the one that impacts the bike connection underneath?
The scope of that project, at least from that trail perspective, has been scoped out to just be deck repairs. I wouldn't say there will be no impacts to the trail, but we will try to preserve that and protect the pedestrians as needed with that, but it's not, the previous conversations regarding relocation or elimination have been shelved for the time being. Not to say we will not revisit it. Okay. Yeah, if you wanna come out to the public meeting next Tuesday.
If you want a lot of people to come to your public meeting, just say you're gonna close that.
Well, we have enough impact with the I-80 reconstruction with 42nd Street, with the city closing that down for 2 years.
For the D Street Bridge, you mean?
For is that D Street? Whatever the railroad is, just south of 42nd there.
It's D Street, I mean, that's what we call it, but again.
There is high potential that we will be closing ramps to I-80 for phase construction, so just after they got full access back, we will be restricting their access back to the interstate.
Sorry, 42nd Street, D Street Bridge, that's structural or resurfacing?
Oh, I was talking about the old city.
Sorry, like, didn't we just do that?
Yeah, that was what I was referencing after the heartache with the heartburn that was involved with that project.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, that's all we got.
I did think of one question, Jim, with the Safe Streets for All application, you said you anticipate one project per applicant.
Yes.
Is that one total, or will it be in the categories of implementation?
I think it's one total. That's how it was written last year. We have heard of communities that submitted more than one and they were considered. So what that really falls out to be, I don't know. I would say, restrict yourself in your planning, and if we're lucky, apply for more. But yeah, that's how it's written.
I think right now we're looking at some implementation of our urban core reconfiguration program for that, so that's we're anticipating is our top level.
Okay, great, yeah, we're happy to help with you need data wise.
Chrissy, I'm gonna kick it back to you on, you wanna talk about 33rd Hampton timelines, let's get pretty close.
Yeah, I think construction, I don't think it started yet. But it should be starting probably in the next month or two.
Federally funded roundabout project converting a civilized intersection to roundabout.
I think the press release came out just this week, so it's maybe starting this week, or I'm sorry, next week maybe, or.
I think we were just waiting for paperwork.
Anyway, it's imminent, but.
Yeah.
You were also doing a roundabout 67 Cass that right?
That was at Underwood.
That's the one, I can never think of the name.
That was
That was Cuming.
AC projects, talking about Swanson schools.
Sure, Sorensen, was program, we submitted DR 530. For engineers estimate, we were 7.5 million. Contractor bids came in substantially low. When we originally were putting the contract together, we were kind of limited on what our MOU was for the future project that was going to cash those funds out. So we kind of like, lack of a better term, triage the defects we were identifying for repair, but since we received favorable contract prices, we would like to take care of a lot of those other possible change. Doubles the contractor. And
Still within our budget for the DR 530.
yes, right. And
Wait, what do you mean?
So we submitted for 7.5 million. I think the bids came in at
3.9.
3.9. So adding scope back on the change order, get us back at 7.5 to get the scope we need. That's what was submitted on the change order, which that work is underway. Well, it's the biggest undertaking is that. We do have a change order request there, and it's still within our budget. It's submitted on the
Okay,
But it's AC funded, so we're paying 100% up front, but NDOT had mentioned to us that there might have been issues that we need to discuss that with MAPA prior to.
yeah, maybe I'm misunderstanding situation with that. I might have to look at that again. Maybe I don't, yeah. It might be that I wasn't fully understanding what the situation was on that project.
Yeah, so essentially the bids came in really low. From a scoping standpoint, we felt like we had more scope to address, and so we increased the scope to stay within our budget.
Okay, all right, I think that actually, that might clear it. So I'll go back and take a look at that, but if that all looks like it lines up with my program, then maybe we will be able to adjust that in an amendment next month.
Did you guys drastically reduce quantities, or was it just a really good price?
So yeah, something happened in the works.
I appreciate I think that'll clear it up, but I'll let you know for sure.
That's the one.
And then I guess the biggest thing, obviously, we're spending a lot of resources right now on streetcar construction, construction is going surprisingly well. I know there's a lot of negative press out there.
Is there a coalition or something that's coming about?
Oh, it's an alliance.
Alliance.
Which I believe there's a meeting.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah, so I think that's where we're focusing our resources right now.
Is there any other, I guess that's project, so it's time for additional business. Is there any additional business? What caused that sinkhole on Pacific?
Oh, that was a water main.
This is being recorded.
I said that in media, I said that public media.
Figured that's what it was. About people ask me. On schedule.
We talked about this last month, I'll say it one more time, and I guess I'll provide some more context for those of you that didn't attend the statewide quarterly traffic incident management meeting. It's not just engineers and designers that are using the craft database in Nashville, where public police department gave a presentation on how they use Asheville safety to address public comments and concerns about a roadway, and they were able to pretty quickly turn around, know the status of pre and post construction on 36th Street and what they were seeing. So it's a useful tool, not just for public works. So if you have law enforcement or even health department folks that are interested in having a better understanding of our crashes in our region, please invite them to the training next week and then follow up again with an email with me. So, right now that is, they're asking for that to just be public agency attendees.
I'm glad Jim brought that up. I've been to both of the same meetings he's talking about, and the progress with Tim is refreshingly positive. There's some, law enforcement has bought into this, which was very difficult, and this goes back 20 years. To my first Tim meeting when I was at the city, and getting law enforcement and first responders to buy into it was challenging. Now they totally bought into it. They're seeing huge benefits and actually contributing greatly to it, and it's moving the needle. It's a good thing, it really is. Well, if there's no additional business, I would be looking for one last motion today for adjournment. There's a motion. Thanks. There's a second. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed, you can stay as long as you wish.